Welcome back to Geeks Assemble podcast, where we are reviewing the longest commercial for Eggo waffles. I am Chance.
I'm Colby. And, before we get too deep into it, we did something a little fun this last week in the Citadel. We actually kind of did a fun little game. I mean, maybe it's the start of something. I don't know. But we put up a teaser, if you will. Blurry photos, yeah. A teaser, if you will, of what we were going to be discussing here in this episode. And the poster for Stranger Things Season 2, we blurred it. Like, I thought I did a pretty good job, but I don't know if I did. I should have flipped it. That's what I was going to do. I was going to flip it upside down, and then it'd make it harder to guess. Not that I'm giving you tips if we do this again, but, you never know. But we do want to congratulate the winner, the very speedy, observant Celeste Mora of Geek Devotions and Geeks Under Grace. She's in our group, and it was almost immediate. I was like, as soon as she did it, I was like, oh, man. Either she is really, really good or I am really, really bad at this. I don't know the two, but it was fun.
I always like to think it's the latter.
Always the latter. Well, and also honorable mention, because he was on the right trail too. It just didn't get to it in time. Sean Bain, Geeks Under Grace, we appreciate you too. Both of y'all in the Citadel. Of course, many, many more, but y'all were very quick with it, and we just want to give you a shout out. So thank y'all for following and talking in the group. So with that being said, I guess we can shift into discussion proper of Stranger Things Season 2. One thing we didn't do, because this didn't exist then, is really even talk about Season 1. Like, it's just kind of crazy. This show has just took on a life of its own for, people that watch on Netflix. Like, can you think of any other Netflix-produced show that, I know there was House of Cards, which can we or can we not talk about as of late? There's House of Cards, and there was Orange is the New Black, and lots of shows that got a lot of attention. But Stranger Things, to me, has felt like this first one that was like, I don't know, such a wide demographic, and not necessarily adult. Like, I would not want my kids talking like the kids talk on Stranger Things, but I understand it as a fan of the Goonies and Stand By Me shows like that. But as the show is concerned, it seems to have a much broader chance to appeal to, I can't say all ages, but much more of a demographic jump than any of the rest of their shows. So it's just been a phenomenon. The first season especially. I remember how I heard about it. It wasn't picking up on it in the queue. I actually had a friend of mine that recommended that I watch it out of the blue. Like, a friend from school, like years ago. We talk a little bit from now and then, but he's like, you have to watch this show. He just knew it would be perfect for me. And I was like, Terrence, that is awesome for mentioning it, because I don't watch Netflix very often. Like, I make a point to watch it for this show, but I know you watch Netflix much more often than I do. It's just due to my internet access. I just really can't enjoy it as unless I download shows through the app, mind you, through the app. But yeah, I don't really get a chance to get all invested like in the Marvel shows, which I guess Marvel that was pretty broad appeal too. But yeah, so it's been crazy. So here we are to Season 2. Huge anticipation. I don't think I've ever seen anything for sure on Netflix that had the anticipation that Season 2 for Stranger Things has had. They'll roll out a new season for some of these shows, and it's like, yeah, I didn't know they were getting around to that. That's awesome, new episodes. This was an event. Of course, they put it like just days before Halloween, so it really tied into the show, which I guess we'll get into in a little bit, probably with the setting of this one. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Stranger Things before we dig into specifically Season 2?
I think it's like you said about the Season 2 did seem to have like a bigger demographic and everything. They spread it out a little bit, but you got a little bit of like the D&D references for the nerdiest among us. You've got the old Goonies feel, which fits in right with the 80s that it couples it with. So a lot of older adults would understand and be able to associate more with it, and then just the fact that they're kids, which doesn't really lend a lot because they do a lot more adult things than regular kids.
They should, yeah. They talk like kids shouldn't, but at the same time, I think that it is real to how kids are. Your parents, if you're listening, your children probably say and do things you would not approve of when they're not under your supervision. But I think it nails that. Another movie a few years ago that I really liked that was kind of in the same vein was Super 8. I know a lot of people kind of was like, okay, whatever. I really like Super 8.
I never watched it.
You never watched Super 8? Oh, dude, you got to watch Super 8. But it's also in line with E.T. Like, I thought the kids in E.T., that's one of the biggest strengths of E.T. is the kids. The alien's great, don't get me wrong, but it's E.T. is really around the kids and the friends, and they really nail that childhood.
And you said that E.T., was this a movie or?
Are you okay? Please be kidding.
I think you bought it like I wouldn't know what E.T. is.
Yeah, I started to get worried there for like a millisecond because you're really convincing. I get to see things that the listeners don't. I was like, wait, is he for real right now?
And I remember watching E.T. like for the first time on VHS at my grandmother's house on my mom's side. It was an interesting movie.
Interesting movie.
Yeah, good movie.
Well, but yeah, you can see all those influences in this. But yeah, so I guess go ahead and start us off. How do we want to jump into this?
What did you think of the plot versus season 1? You had the season 1 where a big D&D monster that they've they named him, and then having to go after Will or save Will from the monster, all that stuff. And then you have season 2, which is they name a big monster after a D&D character, and then they have to save Will from the monster.
I feel like we've been here before. No, I say that, but at the same time, I thought that it was unique enough in this. I don't know if it's going to, they want to do 4 seasons. I don't know how much mileage the premise has, but there were lots of reflections of the first in this one. But as far as the overall plot for it, I thought that versus season 1, because really I don't want to compare it to anything but its own, it's itself. Season 1 felt much tighter. I'm checking as we record this. I forgot to get an episode count, or maybe you have it. How many episodes was season 1?
Season 1 was like 8, I think. Pretty sure it's 8.
8 episodes. Okay. Well,
That's what I'm.
I hope it doesn't just start playing. Okay, so yeah, there were 8 episodes in season 1, and I believe there were 9 in season.
Yes.
Yeah, there were 9 in season 2, so a little bit extra. But in that extra hour or so of the show, it shouldn't have slowed down the pacing. But I did think that the pacing was slowed down in season 2. But for the plot, I do think that. I like how, I know we'll probably get into certain characters, but there were certain characters in the first season that I thought were my least favorite, who got redeemed in this season.
We all know who you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, we're going to go there. But Christina in the Citadel brought up her favorite character. We'll get to him in a little bit. But I do think that it is impressive for a show to take characters that I had no care about in the first season. No care at all. Okay. No, not a care. But then to bring them to the forefront in likable ways was really awesome.
But since you mentioned specifically pacing, I guess we can go ahead and discuss the episode 7 controversy. And a lot of people.
I see where you're going with bringing that up now, but you meant just like as far as it just being like this island in the middle of this ocean, like right. It just
So everyone that's watched it,
we assume that you've watched the show.
May not understand our terminology when we say the episode 7 controversy. It seemed to be very polarizing as far as an episode. I didn't mind the episode. I thought it was actually a pretty decent episode.
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't like it because it just upset the flow that the show had. And the episode 7 being when Elle meets her sister, essentially, from...
And her, what was her name? I'm trying to remember her name.
That's a good question. She was 8.
She was number 8, but she did have Kali. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Kali was
My computer's freaking out, so excuse the noises.
Well, for Kali, I think that sometimes the casting of these shows, or the way that these things play out, that sometimes the actors or actresses get a little bit of a bad rap for these characters. I thought she did perfectly well with character. I'm actually not one of those who bought into the whole, like, I thought episode 7 was generally intriguing, and it broadens the show out, and I think we're going to get to that later as far as what I think season 3 and 4 go on. I think that with where we're at in this show, season 7 was exactly what's needed in a season 2.
I thought it actually had what season 1 lacked, which was character development for 11.
Yeah, she just kind of dropped into it before, and we kind of see around her.
She gets to see what the world is like outside of the little small town, and get to see what the world is like without the same friends and people she's known and revolving around. So what did I cannot remember the name that they gave her nickname on the team.
Oh, you mean 11?
Yeah, they didn't call her 11. They actually gave her.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
It's gonna kill me all day. I'll have to search that. But either way, I thought that dynamic.
Well, they called her Jane, didn't they?
Hmm?
They called her Jane, did they not?
No.
Oh, I thought they just picked up with her name, like she's just.
They knew her as Jane, but there was
a nickname.
There was a nickname.
Okay. Well, no, I mean episode 7. Now, in the midst of looking at it in terms of this actual season, if you look at it beginning to end, it does kind of have no resolution. But I do think that basically what I'm saying is by the end of episode 7, I think it leaves a lot of unresolved plot points in regards to Kali 8, and I think she's going to show back up is what I'm getting at. I mean, like, you can't just drop her in there and then everybody be like, well, we don't like it, and then all of a sudden, like, we can't see her again. No, that's not how this works. The Duffer Brothers have a story in mind that's going to involve 8 and probably an even larger story that's going to come out in time. But I don't think that it was as bad as it's made out to. I do want to say Derek Spangler in the Citadel, he wasn't that much of a fan of season 2. And he gave some reasons why. He said he still enjoys the show. There's just a couple episodes that made no sense to the storyline. I think in saying that, he's talking about episode 7 specifically. I could have done without the whole episode of Elle meeting her sister. So, yes. Then the evil brother just completely lost me. He's talking about Billy. Yeah, Dacker Montgomery's character, Jason from Power Rangers. That movie that I will acknowledge, but Chance will not.
That's Voldemort as far as I'm concerned.
Well, as he has, so why was Billy even in the show? But with all that said, I can't wait for season 3. He says, so appreciate that. He. But, him and many others just did not care for Kali. And did they have a name as a group? There weren't the Revengers or anything like that.
Not that I know of, no.
Not that you know of. But I didn't mind it, and I just didn't think it was as big a deal as lots of stories made it out to be. It was like the show came out. So to give the listeners some idea, here we are recording this in late November. The show's been out about a month. Within like the first day of release of the show in like late October, there were like multiple headlines about this episode like runt season 2. Now I do know there are people who are paid to watch these shows ahead of time or right at release. I just could not for the life of me see how somebody could power through to episode 7, binge watch this show, and then report on it with such synchronicity at the same time. It was just a multiple, like, wham, 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 bunch of headlines about this episode. I just thought it was overblown. But
her nickname is Shirley Temple.
Shirley Temple, okay. Yeah, with the hair. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry to disrupt the flow there.
So Jane/Shirley Temple /11/ who knows what other names she'll get by the time this show's done.
Okay, as far as season 2 goes, I'm trying to think of a big strength it had.
Over season 1, or just for itself?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it kind of just fell on the same lines that the first season did. I guess I'll start with actual weakness. I didn't like how they made Will the victim again.
Yeah.
I would have liked that to see something, or maybe they're not being a victim at all. Like they discover this mind flayer in some other respect, but I mean, I just didn't like how Will was once again taken out of commission and just a plot device.
Well, as you mentioned that, I think it's interesting, and we can kind of go with this for a minute. If now Will having the experience, and Winona Ryder's character, his mother Joyce behind,
she's been through enough.
She's been through enough already. But let's say that Lucas was afflicted by the Upside Down, and instead of Will, but it was another one in the group that was. Would it have changed anything? I mean, or do you just think that it was too much of the same?
Yeah, I don't like just picking another random kid.
Quit picking on Will so much. I mean,
yeah, maybe just not make it like someone's afflicted or something.
Yeah. Do you think it hewed too closely to the pattern of the first season then in that regard?
Yeah, or maybe if you're going to go down the route of because I mean they did serve a plot point of a person being afflicted and you don't know if you can trust them or if you're talking to them or the beast, but I guess if you would have actually incorporated Max into this,
yeah,
and gave her
what if it had been Max? What if it had been Max? Like there's a group member that's new to the group but afflicted, but you don't know how you feel about her. You can't discount her out. Like she's obviously got this wrong. We have to figure out how to help her because we know what nobody else knows about the Upside Down other than Department of Energy group or whatever, and the people who were affected. Yeah. I like that you said Max because a lot of folks have really justly said she didn't have a lot of reason in the season other than a season of the season. There's not a reason for her to really be on it other than just to serve as like a rope in a tug of war between Dustin and Lucas.
Yeah, so once again, a girl shows up and she's immediately the love interest without any kind of backstory.
Yeah,
but if
in middle school,
if she was the one that gets affected and she became the victim, it would have made sense for her then to become in the know of what happened before, and I think that would have also
deepened her into the group. Yeah,
and it would have deepened the kind of love triangle that was going on there too. Of will they both still try to vie for her affection, even though she's undergoing these types of things? Do they still want to be there for her?
Well, and with that said, though, there have been lots of little girls possessed in movies before. Like it could have been seen as too cookie cutter, but in regards to stuff outside of the series.
But it's supposed to have an 80s theme.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like Exorcist. Ghostbuster type. I don't know, but anyways. So I mean, yeah, there were other ways they could have done it, but I did think that it was genuinely interesting some of the things they did do with Will, because Will, for the most part, in those 8 episodes of season 1, was not seen for the most part. There were little flashbacks, but as a present character, he just wasn't there. And with him in this one, it really gave, is his name Noah Schlatt? I don't remember what his name, Schnapp, I don't remember his name, but Noah is his name. It gave him a chance to really, impress us as viewers. I thought he was very capable as a young actor in that role because he was the center of season 1 without really even being seen for the most part. In this one, he was able to be a center of it and actually be a part, and you see why. But as we're talking about those characters, I have to say I didn't like how Mike really has nothing to do this season except look back on 11 and wish she was there. Like Mike and 11 were like key, and I know they get their moment toward the end, but if you notice, everything about Mike's arc is very much geared towards the end of it. There's not even a whole lot in the beginning. It's just like Mike exists out there. Mike is the wheel in this season, but he's not the center of the show at this point. So he's just kind of existing out there and almost forgotten throughout the show. And it could have been, I don't think they've said this, it could have been due to some scheduling, because I know he acted in the Stephen King's It movie while probably this was filming. And so it might have had something to do with why he wasn't there. But I don't know. I thought he's a good big part of the show, and other than just being this little naysayer from time to time, like, you know, I don't want Max in the group. You know, we don't have room for her. That's really all he got to do for like 7 or 8 episodes, and then at the end he got to dance with 11. I mean, there's not a whole lot there for him to do.
So you think he was that torn up over 11, and just having a girl in the group would just remind him too much of...
That's probably part of it. You know, he probably saw me allowing Max in the group is like it's a not a distrust, but it's a it's like it just goes against what 11 was in the group. It's a disservice to her place in the group, because in Mike's eyes, 11. You know, she does exist. She's been there in Hawkins the whole time, really cruelly. Like, he gets to act out against Hopper there at the cabin, I believe, when he finds out that 11's been around the whole time. You know, it is a little cruel that this kid has been sitting there thinking that to speak with her across the way, and she's just, you know, a few blocks away, or, you know, a few miles away. But yeah, there just wasn't a whole lot for him to do. What about Hopper this season? I mean, did you? He took on another role. I thought that it was
very fatherly.
Very fatherly. I like his name. Why is everybody's name escaping me today as we record this? David
Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff played Hopper. Oh man, Stranger Things.
Hold on.
Harbor, that's it.
Harbor.
Hopper. It shouldn't be that hard.
Same thing.
But David Harbour, I'm anticipating what his career is going to do. Not as he leaves this show or jumps off this show, but the things he does in between these seasons, because he's going to be in the Hellboy remake.
He's really good in that.
It looks awesome. But I really am responding to him as an actor. He's got a really good presence about him, and I thought he was perfectly good in this season. I don't think we can get much further in talking about season 2 without bringing up Bob, though. Right. Sean Astin, like, that's genius.
More like Sean Bean in this.
Sean Bean. Yeah. Man, that's funny. I thought that, you know, of course, the obvious connection of him being in the Goonies, you know, bringing him in as an adult on the show was great. But he just has a way of making this, like, goofy, lovable character who's just awkward, and really, like, Jonathan and Will shouldn't really even respond to him. Like, he's this weird, not even a stepdad at this point, but just the weird mom's boyfriend. But they each kind of grow to him in it. I mean, he's endearing because he's Bob. Bob is awesome. I want to hang out with Bob. But, I mean, yeah, Bob can work on electronics.
Yeah,
Bob
he works at Radio Shack.
That's awesome. Like, how many people can say that anymore? They're going away. But, I mean, yeah, he's, for a middle school age boy, especially these boys, like, he founded the AV Club. I mean, how awesome is that? Like, that was a cool...
Yeah.
Go back around.
The whole thing you're doing, yeah, Bob's the reason.
It's like exists. we're gonna get rid of Bob, and then at the end we're gonna let you know, yeah, he's the reason that these boys even have anything to do with each other. And it's like, you just made a bad thing worse.
Well, they did a good job, I guess, with that. And throughout the season, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, Bob, you know, he's cool, I guess, and he's just kind of
you kind of wonder for a few episodes. I get you. He's like where is this gonna go with him?
And then they do that to him, and you're like, oh man, that kind of sucks. And they let the hurt come after, and like see how important he was and how much you miss him now that he's gone.
Yeah,
bad move, Netflix.
The Duffer Brothers, you guys, man, you went for it. No, but I liked him, and I got to say, for new additions in this season, Paul Reiser. Okay, so he blew my mind. Not so much. It was my own expectations. Okay, did we talk about this or not about him? I mean, off the episode, but where he. Did you watch Aliens like growing up? Did you see the old Aliens movie? You know?
I don't know about growing up, but I have seen it. I have seen it a long time ago.
I actually watched it when I was growing up, so
okay.
I was one of those kids. No, but
one of those boomers, baby boomers.
No, whenever I was watching Aliens growing up, he's just this classic jerk character in that movie, and. Like, there's really nothing redeemable about him. Like, he's out for himself, terrible guy. And then they put him in this, and they put him at work in this evil organization. And I thought, oh, wow. You know, you got Sean Astin. You're trying to reach back to the Goonies. So if you're reaching back, then, man, this guy's just going to be terrible. And I know there were a few moments in his arc where he served the organization in threatening them about getting secrets out, especially Nancy and Jonathan. But whenever he, for the most part in this season, his character, Doctor character, was very, how would you put it? Well, I mean, he worked with them in the end. Like, it was, when it come down to it, it was like, we've got to take care of this. And, you know, it wasn't like sweeping under the rug. It was that, you know, he was along for the ride. And I appreciated the fact that he did not actually die, because they could have just as easily killed him off. I know that Bob went, but they could have killed the Doctor character off. But I liked that he was there at the end with Hopper.
Yeah, you see that at the beginning. Like,
I hope to see more.
He's going to be this real shady dude, and I'm going to wind up hating him by the end.
Yeah.
By the end, he performed like the opposite of the way you think he would have.
Yeah.
And that he was very open about the very secret projects they're doing. Like, hey, there's a portal to the upside down right here.
Yeah.
We're working on it. See what we can figure out with it and everything. And
now there was some menace there, though. That's what I was getting at before. There was some menace, like, you're not going to tell anybody, you know, we'll deal with it, you know, type. And but I don't know. It was just refreshing to see him work against the typecasting that could have been there. But I've never been like a huge like Paul Reiser fan. I never watched. He had a show in the 90s like Mad About You, and you know he's a comedian first and foremost. I mean, it doesn't really show it in the show, but him being in the show and surprising me, that was a great thing, I thought, about season 2.
Now, as I googled Hopper to get the actor's name, I want to bring up something that's also pretty funny in regards to Stranger Things. Did you watch the video I sent you about?
You put me on the spot on the air.
John Ralphio Saperstein from Parks and Rec
playing,
and Steve from Stranger Things, how they think they're connected.
They look like they are.
That was the thing, is everyone thinks that Steve is John Ralphio's dad. and you look at it for the Google search, it tells you what all other people have searched. It shows Chief Hopper, and it says people have also searched for Demi Gorgon, Dr. Martin Brenner, and John Ralphio Saperstein.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
But yeah, that's the ongoing thing and joke. I think it's hilarious that people have, it's real. Like, yeah, people have searched
that much that it's on Google as a top list.
It's so associated with Stranger Things now that it's hilarious. But the video, if you haven't seen it yet, should watch it.
They definitely have a resemblance.
Yeah, they have a resemblance. They sit down with them and like discuss resemblance, and then they try to debunk it. And the more they debunk it, the more it like turns out that they may be actually
confirming something.
Yeah. But anyway,
Dr. Brenner, you brought him up. Sure. He shows up just a little bitty bit, and it was in episode 7, right?
Yeah, it was 7.
Yeah.
He wasn't really there though.
He wasn't. No.
E.T. what?
E.T. what? No, but if I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see more of Brenner. If he's just going to exist in the mind, or I mean, if he really is gone. They kind of play it up that he's still around.
Did he die in the first one?
I thought it was pretty clear he did, but I don't know. People keep insisting that he isn't somehow, because he must have some otherworldly power or so. I don't know, but anyways. But it was good to see him in that come on just to surprise us for a little bitty bit there. Because he does, I've never been a huge Matthew Modine fan. He's a 80s actor that they brought into this show, and it was like, well, in the first season, he's very subdued, and he does the part very well. but there's never been like a bunch of movies where it's like, I'm a fan of him. But he did a good job with it. To see him come back was cool, because he's obviously a huge part of Eleven's life, and making her who she was. But no, I mean, strengths. What about strengths? We kind of went to weaknesses.
Yeah. Strengths. Pass.
Pass? Oh, so no strengths?
Well, I just thought it was about...
Pretty derivative?
It was doing just about as good as the first season did, and just kept along with that. So I don't think it did too much different, and I think that's kind of what...
Okay.
Maybe that's a strength, is it didn't change much up.
Okay, no, there is a strength, and
Okay.
I'm gonna say it now. Are you ready?
Go.
Arcade scenes was awesome. Like, to have a show, huh?
What about it?
What about it? There was no arcade in the first season. Yeah, it's seminal.
That's such an arbitrary thing.
No,
they
it is
call a
not an
strength.
arbitrary thing. That arcades used to be this integral part of that age group in the 80s and 90s, and now they're not. Like, you go to a store and there's like one or two machines there. It's like, yeah, I might put a quarter in and play. You did not get to go to a place that was just full of the games. And I know you go to amusement parks, so they'll put arcade machines sometimes in a little spot that isn't visited like that needs to be. But they're too expensive now anyways. But in the day, it's like, you go with a pocket full of quarters, you have some fun with your friends and play it up. And it was a great social spot. And it's something that we can play games now, with our headsets on, and we can play remotely and all that, so we lose out on it. But that arcade atmosphere was so... They got it. They got it very, very well.
Very creepy guy who ate Cheeto
Yes. That was like, yeah, you can get the room here for a little bit to talk. Like, that the guy who runs the arcade was like, they cast him very, very well. He was he felt like a very creepy dude. Obviously, the point of that, but I just thought the arcade stuff was a strength. And another thing that really stood out for me about this season was the whole exactly when and where they put it. Little details like, Reagan Bush signs and like Mondale signs. The presidential election was all going on, but then being that Ghostbusters was just out, they dress as the Ghostbusters and go to school, and no one else is dressed up. That's good stuff. Like, I don't know, there was some unique stuff in season 2 that I enjoyed. It wasn't just little quippy things about the 80s. They really got it. It was really ingrained in putting it in the fall of 84 that you couldn't have done in the first season. So, and I guess we need to talk about the kids. So the kids are getting older very, very quickly. What are they going to do as far as a time jump? It's going to happen with this show.
A time jump?
They're going to have to. These kids are not looking like... It's like, you can't do a show that's set next week. Like the Mind Flayers, like, I'll be back next week. You can't do it. These kids look a lot different.
Stranger Things 2 is supposed to happen like exactly a year after the
and
first
they're going to
one.
have to do a further time jump or something, or these kids are going to hit a growth spurt. Because they're just not... like, unless they just start filming like right now, which I don't think they're planning to do, but... These kids are like, Lucas is like fixing to get his driver's license, is what I heard.
What?
Yes. Okay. These kids aren't in bikes; they're going to be in cars.
Now that's a stranger thing.
That is a stranger thing. Like, things are gonna have to move along, and that's one reason why this show can't last forever. I mean, it just can't.
Don't say that.
I'm sorry, but unless they went computer generated, they could do a CG show. A CG Dustin. But what did you think about? Okay, so the characters. I mean,
well, we have to discuss now, just because you'd come with if we didn't, your probably favorite character now, and especially in season 2, the poster of Path to Redemption.
You're talking about Steve?
Mr. Steve.
Mr. Steve. Yeah, Steve is actually now a tolerable character. He's not my favorite. He's just a tolerable character. Like, he was insufferable before. He was last season's Billy to me. Like, maybe Billy will get a moment in season 3 to redeem himself. But on that note, Christina had said Steve is the best. Great character development, excellent character development, acting's on point. Talked a little bit about the conclusion, but What was she saying about Steve? No, that's about all she had to say about him. But I did think that I don't remember if it was her someone else, they were commenting about Steve, and Steve has just become a much better character than he was. Before, he was a jerk. Like, season 1, there's really nothing redeeming about him at all. He's just the bane of Jonathan's existence. And, and his relationship with Nancy is all self-serving. And he's just not a person you want to model yourself after. And so
I guess that was going to answer my next question of what team are you on? Are you on Team Jonathan or Team Steve?
I don't think it matters at this point. She's on Team Jonathan. I think that's kind of resolved. It's going to be finding Steve somebody else.
Yeah, season 1 was obvious, like Team Jonathan, but this one I don't know. Maybe it made him. Oh,
you mean he's more sympathetic? Like she could wind up with him and it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe, but I think her and Jonathan are growing together as two people, and I don't think that.
I guess it matters how relatable the situation is. Of some people like to root for the now underdog, and Jonathan has always been consistently a good person and a nice guy.
Who has not had any character change whatsoever out of 2 seasons. Now think about that. That's true. Like he's the exact same. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The sensitive artsy type. He just is.
Yeah, I mean he's more of the intellectual that Nancy would need. You'd think that she can more relate to. But you got Steve, the lovable, empty-headed dude.
Yeah.
Who's now felt a sense of responsibility to look over the kids. Babysitter Steve.
Him and Dustin, that was greatness. And I don't know if they really planned for that. It just happened, and then it just become a part of the show. But yeah. I mean, Dustin, I'll just let everybody in the world know he's my favorite character on this show. I love Dustin. I want to meet Dustin. I've had a few opportunities to go, and I didn't. And at Comic-Cons and stuff. I just hope he gets back around to our area, because not before he's too grown up, but I want to see him kind of as this kid on the show,
Yeah, especially after the last scene of the final episode.
We mean him dancing with Nancy?
Him dancing with nobody for a long time.
And crying. It was so emotional, so good, so good. I guess we can comment too on this now that it wasn't with the first season. We didn't even record it. We didn't exist in, but now they have a show called Beyond Stranger Things on Netflix, which they get all the cast back together to talk about it. Well, it's like this. It's essentially like this. They're just talking about the show. They have a knowledge of how things worked because they're the makers of it, but we just get to comment about what we felt about it. But I did think that it was really cool to watch it. I've seen a lot of discussion shows before, and I thought I liked this format much better. It didn't feel like they were speaking to an audience. It felt like they were speaking to each other more, and it was literally a round table. They got board games and D&D stuff, kind of set up in the room, and it fit the setting of the show. But I thought that Beyond Stranger Things is. I hope that that's something that continues alongside the rest of the seasons. But we've talked a little bit about Mike. We've talked a little bit about Will. Okay, so it was a boneheaded thing about Dustin, though. Extremely boneheaded thing. Did it feel weird to you about, first that he would find Dart and raise Dart, thinking that he could actually raise this creature, but then later that he could approach it and not die? I did think that felt a little off. I don't know. Everybody, hold back. He's my pet. I'm going to walk towards him, and I'm going to make right with him before we leave.
So are you saying it's more there was no reason at all for him to feel like he could trust Just Dart, or do you think it was there's no way in the universe that he'd be able to tell that particular demo dog was?
Well, I think it's all of that. But I mean, yeah, it's that he would walk up to this creature, really not knowing if it is or isn't, but then expect to live through the encounter. It just did not feel, I can't say logical, but I mean, it just felt, again, this boy took this thing into his house and tried to raise it on his own. So it's not like we're dealing with the sharpest tack in the box. But he's a likable, lovable character. But I think that this season did not do his intelligence any justice as a character. Nothing against the actor, because he's doing a great job with the role. But the character of Dustin is just completely dumb. And I say that as my favorite character. Like, you do not take that thing into your house. It killed your cat. You should beat it and be done with it. Like,
he didn't know it killed his cat till like a lot later.
I know it's not like he brought it in and it died. Yeah, I know, but it just, you can look at that thing and you realize there is nothing good that can come of this. You know, call it a pollywog or a frog or whatever, and it begins to grow the legs and starts to walk around and eat more. Like, no, you're gone. You're done. Like, I'm telling the group. And then once you tell the group, he's never going to be in the group again, because that's just crazy. But anyways, what about Lucas? His sister. You can't talk about Lucas without his little sister. There are a lot of folks who were not fans of the little sister, but I thought she was hilarious.
I'd probably count me in that group.
Yeah, you didn't care for her. I thought she was hilarious. Now, she may have overacted a little bit,
yeah,
but it was funny stuff, though.
I thought it was way too cliche and over the top, and like some people fed into that, some people didn't. I mean, it was a miss for me, but I mean, obviously she didn't serve any major purpose or anything, so it's not that big a deal to me that she existed.
Well, but the idea, though, that like characters like Kali or like Lucas's sister, they show up on the show, they exist. You cannot just write them off. Like, you might have to make some tweaking things.
Lucas's sister on the same level as Kali?
No, but I mean, if she doesn't show up again, it's going to be like, there will always be those things. Now, wait, this little girl was always over there pitching shade, like, all the time towards her brother, and like, she's not there to do it anymore. Like, what happened to this girl? Why is she not talking anymore? Maybe I'm thinking too much into this, but you cannot take... I
think you're trying to make her in a way more of a main character than she was ever meant to be.
She is sassy, man. That is a sassy little girl. It was funny. But Max, we talked a little bit about Max, what we could have done with her, but what they did do with her. What did you think?
I think she was just a complete... I don't know. At a certain point, I don't know if she was now thinking about it an intentional misdirection. Mm-hmm. By then, these mysterious...
Well, the first episode was called like Mad Max. Like, you think that going to be very integral to the show.
Yeah, Mad Max. You don't know anything about them. They're very aloof and remote to like the rest of the people there, and it just seemed like there was a mystery there to them. And when it turns out they're just
two kids,
just two broken people.
Two kids that are now their parents are together and now they're here. It did feel like the way they framed it, though, like you said, like it was going to be this big mystery of why are they in this town. He says that you're not my sister, but I'm with you. We don't see parents, and you start to piece together. You're like, I felt like my imagination was going off on its own through it. And then finally when you see it, you're like, okay, now I get why Billy's a jerk, because his dad is a jerk. But as far as Max, it's like, she's just the little sister now. Like, there's no big mystery anymore. But seeing the actress in Stranger Things, beyond Stranger Things, as they talked about it, I think she has much more capability now if they were to start rolling on a season 3. The way she carried herself had a lot more confidence as she just talked. I know she's just being herself, but I think that the actress has the chance to inhabit the role much better. It's just that if the showrunners, the Duffer Brothers, have storylines that justify her being there. But anyways, that was
my point. I argued that she was not justified in being there.
Well,
right now.
But they obviously did not do in season 2 what we talked about as far as, they reused Will as a plot device, more or less. I mean, I hate to say it, but they did. But if in season 3, if they're looking for a reason for why to make Max an integral part of the team, instead of it going after Will, incorporating her like we talked about into a season 3 as that focal point, could really give her a reason to exist. But anyways, Duffer Brothers, take it for what you will.
It fits just because he was an integral part of the story, because he was an integral part of the story in season 1. He had that leftover inside of him, and then it takes over just because he had that much involvement with the Upside Down.
Yeah.
But now that it's basically been completely like cleansed and everything from his body, then I think they could really open up.
And I think that in the first season, it could have been any other child that was affected, and it just happened to be Will. But, you look at Will, he is in a broken home. He's affected by it. It's made him somewhat reclusive. And you look at her background, like I know that she has a stepfather and, and her mother, they're in the same home, but it is similar background. So Lucas has both parents. Mike has both parents. Dustin does not. But if you're looking at someone who has that effect at home that might make their mind vulnerable to be used by the Mind Flayer, then I could see them potentially using Max.
Now you could probably solve two problems with just one solution. In upcoming seasons, you can start to transition, and that the next season, and I'll get into like what could happen in season 3 or what we'd like to see in season 3. They could bring on a much smaller kid who's kind of a fan of the group. They get affected in some way, and they can make them part of the story. And then they have a friend, or another thing happens where they basically build the next generation of that team. So
Lucas's sister. It could actually be. I know.
If you don't make her, so cliche
sassy
and all that, but I mean, maybe that could.
I'm a sassy Demogorgon.
That could be someone else's favorite character. I don't know.
No,
but you
I get it.
The next generation team. As they get older, they start transitioning from the main A team to a more mentoring group.
Yeah,
and then you could
kind of like how Steve has kind of took the group under their wing as an older one. I can see that, but that would necessitate them staying in Hawkins. And when we really talk about plans, I think that we'll talk about that in a minute. But so Max, Bob, Steve, Hopper. What about 11? We haven't talked much about 11 at all, really.
Shirley Temple? Yeah, I think we did a little bit.
A little bit, but we talked about it within the confines of episode 7. What did you think about her season path, her overall? I think this was as much of like, it felt like a superhero story for her. Like, you know what I mean? Where she's coming to grips with her power. It could be used for good, could be used for ill. But, she takes the brighter, the better path towards the end. And seeing her not die, I mean, essentially season 1, she goes back into the Upside Down. Like, we see that, but like, they think she died. Like, this season did not have that same impact. Like, there's a mystery there that we see with him putting the Eggos out in the box.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I know. I've thought the same thing. Like, there was. So if she's back, like, why would he put Eggos in a box? Like,
put Eggos in a box in a random remote location in the woods.
Like, she's gonna come there.
Yeah, like she's.
Maybe he was feeding, like maybe those were like traps for, like, maybe he's a trapper and we don't know it. Like,
trapper for what?
Not for
like
her.
12-year-old girls?
No. I mean, for.
How to Catch a Hopper.
Oh man. Yeah, we're gonna have to call. What's that guy's name? Chris Hansen on the case. No, but I mean, when I say that about catching stuff, I was joking. You really took it there. That was awesome. But yeah, I think that felt really out of place. It was a cool little nod, but really in season 1, what affinity did Hopper have for this little girl? I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of basis for it. For him to then know, hey, I'm going to put Eggos in a box, and she's going to come and find him.
Like, I mean, I've always thought about it in passing, but the more you just dwell on it, the more it's like...
It gets to be a little bit like, man, I can't stop thinking about how dumb this is.
Wide open.
Yeah. And it gets people excited at the end. But there weren't but there were moments. Okay, so in the first season, whenever Will is in the bathroom and he coughs up what may be Dart, when he coughs up this little, like, upside down slug...
But he coughs it up into the sink.
Coughs it up into the sink. But there is people say that it could be dark. Yeah, it could have
went trash can.
Yes, because that's how it works. That's how water systems work.
I'm not a plumber.
I don't know how these things work. But there was that. There was the Eggos, and then of course you saw her. There were moments like that got you ready for the next thing. The only thing we really get here is that they're dancing, and then the gym turns upside down, and we see the Mind Flayer. There's no other breadcrumbs than that are left, other than plot like little loose ends from throughout the season. As far as like at the end of the season, you get here's a moment,
which
you don't get that.
Which also doesn't make sense. So they have a habit of ending the season with things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
So we get the Egos and all that stuff from season 1, and in season 2 we get the gym turning upside down, and we see in the Mind Flayer when it was just illustrated that
it was sealed away.
That he's sealed away in the upside down, and there's should be no discernible way for him to come out.
Yeah. So it would make more sense if it was something else. But it was like at the end of the season, what we just resolved did not get resolved.
Well, they didn't fight or kill the Mind Flayer. They just.
Well, I mean, I get that, but
in the first one, they directly confront and defeat.
What felt like a huge threat, but is just one of many.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was
a thing you fought. There's like billions of them.
Yeah, and they take different forms, and they can be even more terrifying and run on all fours.
So it looks like possibly Mind Flayer is going to be another.
Oh, definitely
recurring again. But I was thinking maybe they would continue down and pick another D&D monster or something. Make that just.
I think they'll throw the name onto it, but I mean, I think it'll be a smaller threat. Like they'll name that, but the Mind Flayer is the end game. Like, and I could potentially, no matter how frustrating it may be, I could see the Mind Flayer playing out over season 3 and 4. Like, I don't see how at this point you could resolve the Mind Flayer in season 3 and then have a bigger threat that is justified. If you play it out as like the Sauron, or you play it out as the Emperor, then the Mind Flayer is going to be there, and it will dispatch new threats. We got demo dogs in this one, so I guess miniature demigorgons.
So you think Mind Flayer is just going to be like
the big bad?
Game?
Yeah, okay. Mind Flayer I think has to be the big bad, because at this point, what else could there be? I mean, it literally is the big bad that like reaches over and sees it all.
And so maybe send like a Beholder or another D&D monster.
And I think that if they'll take those old guidebooks and dig into them, they'll find one that sticks out. Because essentially, I feel like that's what they did in this show. And it wasn't just in name only. Like they, obviously appeared differently, but the attributes. That's how the kids made the connection. And I think that's cool. I mean, that's really cool. I don't know how that works with permissions and stuff, because, it's one thing to, show Egos in there. It's like, hey, we're going to take your campaign notes and we're going to make this into our show. But
don't want Wizards busting down the scene because they got a lot of money.
Yeah. And, of course, they're looking at, old editions. But was it first edition or second edition they were looking at?
I don't know what edition they were looking at, but I mean, they're all...
It's all old stuff. It was old 80s, time appropriate.
Pretty much like Wizards and all their Dungeons and Dragons properties, they made a lot of what we consider monsters and stuff now. They were the monster generators and kind of that stuff. Which begs the question, is all of this, since it's so applicable to Dungeons and Dragons and that's what they play, is the Upside Down and all these threats something that they've came up with, it's their kind of, they've generated themselves.
Oh, as they play. Dude, you might be getting very meta on this all, but that it could be. I mean, who knows? I don't really know where. I guess we can transition into this, unless you want to talk about Demogorgons or any of that stuff. Transition into what we think this show's going to turn into. I do think that on its own level, it's this coming of age story. I mean, that's why it's resonating so well. And all that will take place. But as far as these fantasy sci-fi elements, I don't know what the end game is going to be. But I do think that they're going to have to get beyond the city limits of Hawkins. It can't just still stay in this town. I mean, the lab, what is it called, by the way? Do they just keep calling it the lab? What is it?
It's Hawkins Lab.
I mean, Hawkins Lab is what they call it, but it's Department of Energy. But I mean, is there a name for the department? I just never can remember to.
Yeah, Hawkins National Laboratory.
Okay, so it's gone, and so I don't know why there is a justifiable plot reason other than the logistics of kids in Hawkins. I don't know the reason for them staying within city limits. Like, it's gonna have to get beyond it. Now, in this, frustrating for a lot of folks,
beyond Stranger Things.
they're gonna, you know, she went to like Chicago, and I think that, and then they drive to Atlanta. That's where all the action took place in episode 7. They made their little cross country road trip. Like, she rode all over with them, and I thought it worked, and I think we were okay with it. And some folks weren't, but they're gonna have to branch out beyond just this small town in Indiana in order to tell this increasingly larger scoped story. And so I really don't know what they're going to do, but I would hope that the audience is okay with the show changing to fit what it has to do. And I think that's why they started it small here. They give you a little road trip, they take you to the city, which the city scenes were cool. I thought that was very quintessential 80s. You know, how many times do you see flaming trash cans in the alleys? You know, it's like I can't tell you how many comic books and shows I've seen where flaming trash cans. But
is that an 80s thing?
Or is that just a thing? It just felt very 80s cinema, like in 80s, like for the aesthetic of cities a lot in comics and movies and stuff. But yeah, I thought they got the city right. And then they put her running away to the song Runaway, which I thought was like, obviously obvious, but it was perfect. That was a good use of music. Lots of good music used in this season. That has to continue. They use, first season, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Ad nauseum, like throughout. I mean, it became a part of the plot. And they used it again a couple times in this one. But them branching out and getting more songs is something that I think they should definitely double down on. Not that every song, every episode, 8, 9 episodes has to be song centric, but I do think that it added a lot to this season. And I thought, because it was used in marketing, that Thriller would have gotten used. But I'm trying to think if that song was out chronologically to have fit then. Whenever it was set, but I think it was. Yeah, when was that written?
82.
Oh yeah, it was already out. Yeah, it was out. So I was really confused.
It would have fit perfectly because this was like a very Halloween episode.
Yes, like I was expecting the whole time to hear it pop up, and it didn't. But anyways, what are your hopes for season 3 and beyond?
I think just pretty much actually now that I've talked about it, just them transitioning the team, because like you said, this can't last forever, and just thinking of the longevity of the series, they're gonna have to transition to kid if they want to keep it kid centric.
I think one of the kids will have to die at some point too.
Don't do it.
Oh yeah, they'll have to die because that raises the stakes. You know how narratives work. Somebody has to die. I really genuinely thought Will was going to die by the end of this season. I know that Joyce, they couldn't have even considered her as a character anymore. They would have had to basically write her off because all the stuff she's been through, to have the kid die at the hands of all this would have been too much to have her as a character to focus on. But I genuinely thought, like, the show surprised me. I thought Will was going to die because he felt like he had to die. I mean, like, they ingrained it in this that he was along for the ride and possessed by the Upside Down, or that he was going to be a goner. And by the end, he may be the character that has to go. I mean, I don't know.
After all that?
After all that. But I mean, not that I want it. I'm not saying kill Will, but
movie and call it Kill Will.
Kill Will. There you go. Volume 2. But no, I just think that somebody will have to, and I don't know who. Maybe it's Mike. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like all that pining after 11 and their closeness, and then
so you think
this has devolved into a kill kids character, show. But I just think that they got a little taste of that. Like, okay, they killed Barb, and pretty conclusively killed Barb. And then it's like, Barb will never die, justice for Barb, and like all these hashtags and stuff that, kind of kept these hopes around. Then they literally show you a funeral, like she's gone. And so death is becoming, even if it's not like some other shows, it's becoming an important part of the show. Bob, bit it in this season. So
I actually think in season 3, Steve's going to eat it.
You could be right, because they don't know, going to know what to do with him if her and Jonathan stay together.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is it's only going to strengthen Jonathan and Nancy's relationship. And Steve's just going to see just how much.
And it's going to hit us because we hated him at first, and then we really grown on him, and then he's going to die, and we're going to feel terrible.
I don't think it's going to be just him accidental death or whatever. I think he's going to sacrifice himself in some way.
He went from looking out for number one to being the first one to step up to bat, literally, the creatures that in the show. So if he does, then I could see that happening for sure. But I don't know. When I said that about death, I'm just thinking that something's going to have to happen to the main group of kids. Something.
You want something to happen?
No. I don't know. And then with it being the little love triangle now with Dustin and Lucas and Max,
I don't want triangle anymore.
It's not, but at the same time, you can't kill off Lucas and then Max run into the arms of Dustin. It just feels weird. I mean, these are all kids, but that's how drama works.
It feels a little weird just to say, man, I hope those kids get together.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know.
Maybe Dustin and Nance.
Yeah, Jonathan and Steve are gone, and then it's Dustin.
Surprise! She couldn't resist the pearly whites.
But I mean, I love the show. I love the humor. I love the setting. I love all this stuff about it. Ultimately, my assessment on the season, I just thought that it was a great continuation of the show. I have rewatched the first season, so I've seen it a couple times. It's still too close to rewatch the second season, but it's a show that's not for everybody. My wife didn't quite get into first season, so if I rewatch it, it'll be me again watching it. But I do think that it is cool to see how well received that this show has become. So I'm looking forward to more. You got any thoughts on it?
I think that's pretty much wraps it up.
Pretty much wraps it up. Well, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram by searching @GeeksAssemble, on Facebook at facebook.com/GeeksAssemblePodcast. Podcast. The Citadel, you can find us, that is our community group, at facebook.com/groups/GeeksAssemblePodcast. Podcast. And of course, our hosting site is podcastgarden.com/podcast/GeeksAssemble. Appreciate everybody that listens to us. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and as time goes on, maybe even on more platforms. We love any interaction that you can give us on any of our social media platforms. Tell anybody about us that you know. Give us a listen. Give us a share. We really appreciate it. We generally share the episode art and links and all that through our Facebook page and through the others. If you can retweet or share, that's a big help for us. Kind of builds our audience, and we just appreciate all this so far as it goes forward. So with that being said, we'll catch us next time. My name's Colby.
I'm Chance. And thanks again, guys and gals, for listening. And remember, when there's something strange in your neighborhood, you know who to call. But if there's something stranger, call a 13-year-old girl.